Imagine the early Maya ancestors. They haven't eaten in 2 days. They know exactly where the herd of white-tailed deer is. They tracked it yesterday through the dense Mesoamerican jungle. They found the prints. They mapped the route in their heads. And now all they have to do is get there. And then it starts raining, not a light tropical drizzle, a heavy, soaking, wind-driven downpour that doesn't stop. It goes all day. Then all night. Then the next morning and it's still going. Now they can't hunt. They can't see tracks because the jungle mud has washed them away. They can't move through the thick canopy because wet ground and bare feet on slippery limestone means a twisted ankle. And a twisted ankle out here in the ancient P10 forest means death. The river near their camp is rising. And the fire, the one thing keeping them warm, keeping the predators away, and keeping them alive, is now starting to struggle. They aren't bored. They are trapped. For most of human history, rain wasn't an inconvenience. It was a crisis. And what the early Maya did during that crisis might be more important than anything they did on a clear day. For a human being wandering the ancient Americas 10,000 years ago, that relentless rainstorm could kill them in 3 different ways before it even stopped. The first one is cold. The jungle can be sweltering during the day, but a wet human loses body heat up to 25 times faster than a dry one. Without waterproof shelter, a long rainstorm dropping the temperature during a highland night in Chiapas could push their core temperature into hypothermia range within hours. The second one is flooding. The main places these early hunter-gatherers lived were often at the base of hillsides or inside the vast limestone cave networks of the Yucatan. Heavy rain meant flash floods pouring into the subterranean caverns and cenotes. Archaeologists have found layers of flood sediment inside these occupied caves, meaning the water rushed in while the ancient Maya ancestors were living there. And the third one, maybe the worst, is predators. Rain drove animals into shelter, too, and sometimes that shelter was the exact same cave the early Maya were hiding in. Imagine sharing the dark with a massive prehistoric jaguar. Rain compressed the entire world. Humans, predators, prey, all of them squeezed into the same small, dry spaces at the same time. Through all of that, one job mattered more than everything else. Keeping the fire going, controlling a fire that already exists, and creating one from nothing in a damp jungle are 2 very different skills. If their fire went out, relighting it in a torrential downpour was nearly impossible. They would have to carry an ember from somewhere else. The early Maya ancestors did exactly this. They transported smoldering coals wrapped in green leaves, or packed inside pieces of oak, a highly resinous pine wood that could catch a spark and burn stubbornly even in damp conditions. It was their biological lighter. Losing their fire was fatal. So when the rain hit, the first priority wasn't shelter. It was the fire. Move it deeper into the cave. Shield it with animal hides or broad ceiba leaves. Feed it carefully. Find dead lower branches from the canopy above, the ones still protected from the wet sky. Split open soaked logs to get at the dry wood inside. Use copal resin as kindling because it catches fire and burns fiercely even when moisture is in the air. One person's entire job during a rainstorm might have been just sitting next to that fire for hours, feeding it, shielding it, because that fire was warmth, light, safety, cooked food, and the center of the early Maya's world. All right, so the fire is going and they are mostly dry. But they cannot leave. So what do? They make things. The caves and rock shelters of ancient Mesoamerica, like Loltun Cave, are packed with evidence of manufacturing. Piles of flaking debris, tiny razor-sharp chips of obsidian and chert that fly off when shaping a blade or an atoll dart are found concentrated in specific spots, exactly where an ancient Maya hunter would sit near the firelight and work for hours. It wasn't just stone tools. They processed pigments. Using freshwater shells as mixing bowls, they ground red hematite into fine powder, using bone tools to stir and apply it. This wasn't basic survival, this was production. And then they made string. Using the thick leaves of the agave or henequen plant, someone sat in a cave, stripping the fleshy pulp away to reveal the tough fibers, rolling them against their thigh to twist them into rope. Making rope is slow, repetitive, and requires immense patience. It's the perfect bad weather task, and rope changed everything for the early Maya. It let them tie things together, build better shelters, create snares for a agouti, and bind sharp obsidian to wooden handles. An incredible amount of their technology ran on string, invented and perfected by someone stuck inside waiting for the rain to stop. They also made their shelters livable. They arranged layers of palm fronds, ramon leaves, and dried grasses as sleeping mats. Some of these local plants acted as natural insect repellents. They weren't just surviving in that cave. They were making it comfortable. They were making it home. But here's where the story takes a turn. Because the tools, the rope, the bedding, that's the practical stuff. What came next is something else entirely. The art deep inside the limestone caverns, ancient hands left their mark. Paintings and hand stencils of tapirs, jaguars, and harpy eagles, drawn with a level of observation that still shocks us today. The artists understood the anatomy, the movement, and the spirit of the jungle's most elusive creatures. These weren't doodles. These were the works of people who watched these animals for thousands of hours and then recreated them from memory, deep underground by firelight. These paintings aren't at the entrance of the cave where they sat for shelter. They are deep, sometimes hundreds of meters in, through narrow passages, in chambers they had to crawl to reach. Someone carried an animal fat or resin lamp into total darkness and painted. Nobody does that when the weather is perfect and the hunting is good. They do that when they can't go outside. When the rain has been falling for 2 days. When every obsidian blade is sharpened and there's nothing left to do but go deeper into the dark and create something. The most creative explosions in early Maya prehistory happened when they were forced inside, and that leads to something even bigger. Rain didn't just create art, it created culture itself. What happens when a band of early Maya ancestors is forced into a confined space for days? They talk, they listen, they share information. During the day, conversations might be practical. But at night, around the fire, the conversation shifts to stories, songs, and ceremonies. The firelight softened faces, reduced tension, and created a space where people opened up. The campfire was the original social network. And the knowledge shared around that fire was survival. Where do the hidden cenotes hold water in the dry season? Which roots and vines are safe to eat? Where are the best flint deposits in the highlands? How do you track a white-tailed deer through the underbrush? That is critical knowledge being passed from one brain to another. Beyond the practical, there were the stories. Explanations for why the rain comes and where it goes. The earliest seeds of Maya mythology, the origins of the rain god Chaac, the terrifying depths of the underworld Xibalba, the roots of the sacred ceiba tree holding up the world. Those stories were almost certainly born while sitting in the exact situation the myth was trying to explain. The collective memory of the ancient Maya survived through generations of people sitting together, retelling stories over and over while the rain hammered outside. Rainy days were transmission time. The days when knowledge moved from the old to the young. Now, here is the part that is easily forgotten. Rain wasn't always bad. Sometimes, it was the best thing that could happen. After a heavy rain, the jungle floor is soft. Soft ground means perfect tracks. Deep, clear, detailed. The early Maya hunters could see exactly which animals walked past, how long ago, and where they went. Rain also meant water. Depressions in the limestone rock, the aguadas filled with clean water, and some were even deliberately carved deeper by these early ancestors to hold more. The rain also changed the food supply. After a storm, the jungle explodes with life. Edible tubers are easier to dig from the wet soil. Swarms of leafcutter ants and other insects emerge, providing a massive, effortless source of dense protein. A rainy period didn't stop the food supply, it changed it completely, and the groups that understood those changes had an enormous advantage. So, what did the early Maya ancestors do when it rained all day? Everything that mattered. They kept the fire alive. They flaked the obsidian tools they would use for the next hunt. They twisted the agave rope that would hold their shelters together. They ground the red hematite to paint on cave walls deep underground. They told the stories that would eventually build one of the greatest civilizations on Earth. And when the rain finally stopped, they walked outside into the damp jungle, looked at the perfect tracks in the mud, and got back to work. Rain didn't slow them down. It gave them time to prepare for everything that came next. Every tool, every piece of knowledge, every story, every painted hand on a limestone wall, all of it came from the hours and days when they couldn't go out, when their survival depended on what they made with their hands and their minds in the dark. The ancient Maya didn't get bored. They got creative. And that is exactly why their legacy survived.